Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Hope you're all settled in because today we have a very special session in our Mahabharata series. Forget the myths of passivity. If Dhritarashtra is the warning, Yudhisthira is the blueprint. When your world burns and every pillar collapses, how do you maintain a pulse of pure steel? Today, we deconstruct the ultimate anchor in the storm. From the enchanted lake to the final ascent, we are exposing the raw grit behind the grace. Welcome to episode 7, Leadership at the Edge of Dharma. Let's dive in. Hello, sir. Please welcome our leadership catalyst, Commander Girish Konkar, sir.
Hi and welcome. Good evening. Look forward to a great episode.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm going to shoot it my first question straight away. Your four strongest pillars just collapsed, leaving you alone against a lethal threat. Does a leader strike with rage, or is there a silent, higher warfare that can bring a dying organization back to life?
Great question. We are now fast forwarding directly to the Yaksha Prashna episode. Those of you who have read Mahabharata or seen Mahabharata would remember. That is the questions of the Yaksha. This happens in the what is called as the Vana Parva, also known as the Aranyaka Parva or the Book of the Forest. And this incident happens in the 12th year of the Pandavas' exile. So we've already fast forwarded a lot actually. And literally the final exam before their year of living incognito, that is in the Agnyatwas. And this serves as the ultimate validation of Yudhishthir, whether Yudhishthir is ready to lead, not because he survived the forest, but because of his vivek, that is discernment, his ability to think through questions, and his dharma, that is righteousness, integrity, honesty, etc. And all these remain intact under extreme duress. Imagine a Monday morning from hell where your entire A team suddenly vanishes. And this was Yudhishthir at the enchanted lake. His pillars, that is the muscle of Bhim, the genius of Arjun, they were lying there like fallen golden poles, so to say, total lethal silence. And most leaders in such a situation where there is the top four people of his organization are practically uh, dead would hit a total what is called as an amygdala hijack. That means your survival instincts will take over and the blind panic rage and that ruins careers. But Yudhishthir, he stays clinical. He knows that shouting at the water, at the lake, at the yaksha won't bring them back. And as an invisible voice fires metaphysical riddles like a relentless, what do you say, a board of directors, he doesn't flinch. He outthinks the crisis by being the calmest person in the forest. Great lesson that we can learn from here, to be the anchor in the storm. And that is what is leadership all about, your emotional intelligence, emotional regulation. See, panic spreads, but so is calm. By regulating his own pulse, by breathing, meditation, and all so many techniques which are there, which one can utilize, Yudhishthir transformed a terminal disaster into systemic growth. A second lesson we can see from this is strategic empathy. Yudhishthir prioritized dharma over ego. Dharma is his rightful, duty. Choosing fairness for the whole system over his personal favorites. In modern day, our examples, if you can think of, is somebody called Sridharan, the railway man. Sridharan during the Konkan railway project. And he was faced with impossible terrain and fatal accidents, project delays which were happening for so many years. Yet he remained the calmest person in the room. He didn't hunt for scapegoats when things were getting derailed because of the weather, because of the terrain. He prioritized the project's integrity, providing the psychological safety the team needed to perform under brutal public scrutiny. And therefore, there could be some, I would say, four moves to build your personal anchor protocol. How do you stop being a reactive manager and start leading like Yudhishthir? And this is your mission for the week. I would request all of you to write this down. Okay. Very important first one is the 5-second rule. It's a great hack. Most so next time you are in a crisis or an emergency, whenever that emergency hits, press the pause button for 5 seconds. Don't type, don't speak, don't utter a single word. Just do 5 seconds of deep breathing. Give your Vivek, the conscious mind, the conscious brain, to start working. Do not react with the subconscious mind. And this 5 seconds gives the conscious mind a chance to override the subconscious mind and the panic. And your first job now, therefore, is to stop the fear virus from spreading to your teams. The second is equity over ego, which we'll talk about in a later part also. Look beyond your Arjunas, your top performers. Make a decision that protects the entire organization, especially the hidden departments. And a third, this is called as mastering the meta question. Stop poaching potholes, meaning don't just solve the problem, solve the underlying root cause, underlying principle. Find the mool karan, that is the root cause. What is at the base? When you answer the underlying riddle, the symptoms vanish. Fourth one, own the elephant in the room, meaning if a project hits a wall, ditch all the corporate jargon. Acknowledge and accept the reality immediately. It has a huge brain hack when you say, I acknowledge that there is a problem. Biggest challenge that leaders face is they don't acknowledge that there is a problem. They think everything is hunky dory, everything is fine. I'm always great. It's my team that is creating the problem. No, acknowledge that there is a problem and we need to solve it. Honesty and integrity is the best way to keep your leadership chariot from hitting the dirt.
Wonderfully said, sir. And I think these rules that you've just given, I'm going to quickly summarize them so that, in case somebody wants to write them down, it'll just become easier. So, your rules are: the first is the 5 second rule, where you pause for 5 seconds before you speak, make a decision, anything. Second is equity over ego. So, you have to look beyond your top performers and think of the entire organization. Third is master the meta question and don't just solve superficial issues. Finally, own the elephant. So, acknowledging reality. So, this is my quick summary of
Absolutely.
what Sir has said. Now, Sir, you've mentioned a very important point here about. I'm sure every leader knows their top performers. They know the superstars, the Sachin Tendulkars in their team, so to say. So, if you're posed with a very difficult challenge where you can save only one team member, do you pick the superstar or the one who keeps the organization's soul intact? Is radical fairness a strategic gamble, or is it the ultimate leadership masterstroke?
So, taking forward this lake episode, at the edge of that enchanted lake, the Yaksha posed the final agonizing test for Yudhishthir. He says, yes, you answered all my questions perfectly fine, but I'll only revive only one of your brothers. And he says, choose. Whom would you like to revive? Now, for any leader, the logical choice probably would be Bhim or Arjun. You know, they are his brothers. One is the unstoppable muscle, that is Bhim, and other is a unmatched archer. Dhanudhar. And without them, reclaiming his kingdom was practically impossible. And they were his blood brothers. And the other two, Nakul and Sahdev, were actually stepbrothers. Yet Yudhishthir chose Nakul. He reasoned that his father had two wives, Kunti and Madri. And as Kunti's surviving son, he could not allow Madri's lineage to be extinguished. Now, this is where his genius comes to play. This was not a tactical military decision. It was an act of what in Sanskrit the word is anushanyasa, the highest form of fairness. By prioritizing systemic equity over his own inner circle, he moved the Yaksha to restore every single brother up to life. A modern lesson we can take from this is go beyond the inner circle in the corporate world. The choice of Nakul is the antidote to chronism. And a modern example, sometimes I could think of is Ratan Tata's leadership during 2008 Nano project, or even the Taj Mahal Hotel, the chaos that happened, the debacle that happened when the terrorist had attacked, and the revival of the Taj Hotel. Now, what we understand is Tata's focus on the Tata, he focused on the Tata Nano vendors or the smallest employees of the Taj, regardless of their rank or blood relation to the core executive team. And everybody was impacted. And this mirrors Yudhishthir's equity. What could be the lessons we can draw from this? One, I can think of is audit your mentorship. Are you grooming people who remind you of yourself? I would say actively sponsor a Nakul, someone from a different department or another department, and give him that ownership and empowerment. The second, the mother test for stakeholders. When allocating resources, ask yourself, is every branch of this organization surviving, or am I just feeding the strongest one? Third one is public fairness. Ensure your most visible rewards aren't reserved for your Arjuns. Recognizing the Nakuls builds a culture of psychological safety. And I always tell people in my programs also, I hide behind some pillar and look for people who are doing good. What happens is we always point fingers at people who are not doing good. Also catch them doing something good. Always publicly acknowledge them for their greatness, for whatever good that they've done. If there's something to be rebuked, do that in private. So praise in public, rebuke in private. Guys, if Yudhishthir's choice to prioritize systemic equity over his own inner circle struck somewhere a chord with you, please like and subscribe. And because this is how we grow our tribe of ethical leaders. I also love to hear from you in the comments. What is your aha moment regarding fairness in your own team? Because your insights are the fuel that inspires us to keep digging deeper into these Bori critical editions and give you some great insights.
Very true, sir. And I've seen the hard work you put in with every episode. You go through the edition, you come up with these points. So it's really, I think it's very, very helpful and happy for us when we see our subscribers increasing. We see people joining our lives more, which I already see happening. So coming back to Yudhishthir, handed a jungle designed to make you fail. So, you don't have a budget, just dense forest. Do you complain or do you engineer? How does a leader transform a hand me down ruin into the industry's most envied headquarters?
Okay, so we are rewinding here a couple of years. Okay, from the Yaksha story, which was during the 12th year of exile, we are coming back a number of years, in fact. And in the Bori critical edition by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, the granting of Khandavprastha, this occurs in what is called as the Adi Parva, that is the book of the beginning. And specifically, this takes place within the Rajalabha Parva, that is a section of on gaining of the kingdom, which is in one of the subsections of the Adi Parva. So, as the viewers may recall in the Mahabharata, after the Pandavas marry Draupadi and they reveal themselves to be alive, so Dhritarashtra invites them back to Hastinapur. And to prevent a civil war between the cousins, he decides to divide the Kuru kingdom into two. That is great. Fantastic. And the deal is the Pandavas are given the western uncultivated and desolate portion of the empire known as Khandavprastha. It was a dense and uncultivated forest inhabited by the Naga tribes and so called spirits, and it was considered as a gift from Dhritarashtra, which was meant to fail. Now, Yudhisthira did not protest the unfairness of this budget or the quality of the territory, nor did he succumb to the victim mindset. Instead, he saw what others couldn't: potential. With a clear vision, he marshaled his team and he engaged the architect Maya Danav and utilized the strength of his brothers. And through grueling labor and strategic planning, they cleared the wilderness and laid the foundation for a city that would eventually rival the dwellings of even the gods. And the jungle was transformed into Indraprastha, a marvel of architecture, irrigation, and commerce. And this shift was not just about building walls, it was about a leader refusing to be defined by his constraints. A leader's greatness is not defined by the inheritance that they receive, but by the legacy they build from the ruins. And you know what? They were there in Indraprastha for 23 years. A modern lesson that we can draw from this is the zero-based visionary. A stellar modern example could be Kiran Mazumdar Shah of Bio, Biocon. Now, when she started Biocon in a garage in Bengaluru, she faced a, so to say, deluge of skepticism. She was a woman in a male-dominated field, had no collateral, and was trying to build a biotech firm in an India that lacked the necessary infrastructure. She didn't wait for the perfect conditions. Like Yudhishthir, she used her limited resources, the enzymes that they create, and a small team to build a global biopharmaceutical giant. Here I'd like to give our viewers some actionable steps for us. One is asset mapping. Instead of listing what you lack, also list the hidden assets in your current jungle. Number two, engage the Maya Danavs, meaning seek out specialists and unconventional thinkers who can see possibilities where others see problems. Continuously build on the small gains that you get. Don't wait for the grand palace. Clear the first acre. Focus on the immediate high impact transformations to build momentum, and keep your eye on the larger picture of after this, where will it go 5 years from hence. So I'll say plan for 5 years, but act for the next 1 week.
Mhm.
That's what I would like to say on this.
Uh, so, we've often heard this phrase being thrown around: everything is fair in love and war. So, in the context of Yudhishthir, can a whispered half truth to win a must win battle, that's like do or die for them, strip you of the magic that has made you unstoppable? Is it a tactical win worth your leadership chariot hitting the dirt?
The time is now the thick of Kurukshetra war. Okay, so we are jumping from various episodes, purposely keeping it so that the viewer can say, okay, now is where are we now? Where are we then? So it's not in a chronological order. We are already now in the thick of the battle, and it's the 15th day of the battle. Okay, the invincible Dronacharya was literally decimating the Pandav forces, and to stop him, a desperate plan was hatched. So Drona would only lay down his arms if he believed his son Ashwathama was dead. And Bhima slew an so therefore what happened was Bhima slew an elephant named Ashwathama, and the Pandavas urged Yudhishthir, the man who never lied, to confirm the news. And because Dronacharya said, I'll only believe the news if Yudhishthir confirms it. I'll not believe anybody else. He is the only one. And that is the time all of you, I'm sure, know, Yudhishthir uttered the fatal word saying, Ashwathama is dead. And he then added in a low whisper, the elephant. But the blare of the shells and the conches and whatever instrument that they had at the time drowned out that clarification. Now, for years, Yudhishthir's chariot apparently had hovered four finger breadths above the earth. That's a physical manifestation of his absolute adherence to Dharma, to his, to his duty and to his commitment and integrity, honesty, etc. And the moment he succumbed to this technicality, his chariot wheels struck the dust. And by compromising the spirit of truth for a tactical gain, he lost his literal and metaphorical elevation. He was brought down to Mother Earth. And this isn't just a military maneuver, it was a leadership tragedy. It proved that when a leader uses fine print to deceive, they might win the battle, but then they forfeit the divine authority that makes others follow them blindly. That trust was lost. And the weight of that small compromise was enough to bring a soaring reputation down to the ground. The lesson that we can draw from this, I would call it as the fine print trap. In modern leadership, integrity is often traded for quarterly targets. And we see this happening n number of times in today's modern world. Because the quarterly targets have to be hit, so people take shortcuts. And again, at the cost of repeating from earlier episodes, the biggest example is the Satyam Computers scandal involving B. Ramalingaraju. By manipulating the accounts, even slightly at first, just to show growth, he compromised core transparency. And like Yudhishthir's chariot, Satyam's elevated market status crashed the moment the technical half-truth was exposed. Even if the leader wins a contract through a whispered caveat, the loss of trust is permanent. Let me come to this with some actionable steps for today's leaders. One is the transparency test. If your stakeholders only heard the first half of your statement, would they feel deceived when they learn the second? If yes, don't say it. Number two, radical honesty in failure. When a project fails, own the elephant. Put up your hand and say, okay, my fault, my failure. Don't hide the truth behind technical jargon or saying market conditions. Third, audit your technicalities. Frequently review your marketing and your internal communications. And I find this is where maximum amount of jiggery pugri goes on. People find ways out in that in the communication that they do. Ensure as a leader the whispered details, the fine print are as clear as the headlines.
Uh, so this new addition that we're doing, where we're now talking about the actionable steps that go with each of these lessons, is wonderful. I'm sure you know that we'll have a lot of people who will then start talking about it and let us know in the comments how they are relating to these actionable steps as well. So one question I want to ask you: when a deal turns sour, Do you pivot or stay the course? Is breaking the rules of engagement for a quick win worth the permanent loss of your team's trust and predictability?
Okay, no standard answer can be given for this. However, in Yudhishthir's case, stripped, humiliated, exiled. After the catastrophic loss in the game of dice, the Pandavas were handed a brutal 13-year non compete clause. The terms 12 years in the wilderness and 1 year living incognito. If they were caught in that final year, the entire cycle is reset. Imagine living as a nomad while your enemy enjoys your throne. And as the years pass into one of the other, the frustration boils over. Bhim and Draupadi are fuming. They urge Yudhishthir to scrap the contract. They cheated. The deal is void, they argued. They wanted an immediate strike to reclaim their honor. Yet Yudhishthir stayed unshakable. He didn't deny about the unfairness. He just refused to break his word. Is that good, bad? I don't know. But he refused to it. To him, the contract wasn't a deal with Duryodhan. It was a commitment to his own dharma. And this is a distinction between his commitment and Bhishma's commitment. See, Bhishma's commitment, many people, if you remember in the first episode, he thought he had given a commitment to the throne, which he had never given. The only two commitments Bhishma had given. One was not to be the king, not to get married. In Yudhishthir's case, it was very clear. He says, I have given a commitment to Bhim, and even it means that, to Duryodhan, I will stick to it. And he knew that a leader who discards the rules the moment they become inconvenient loses the moral authority to ever lead again. And by honoring that grueling process, he ensured that when the war finally came, he held the high ground of absolute legitimacy. True power isn't the ability to break a contract, it's the discipline to keep it when it hurts. If some of you might remember in the early 90s, Mr. N.R. Narayan Murthy and the Infosys team apparently faced their own financial exile. The pressure to take shortcuts, apparently to pay bribes for licenses or fudge the rules. And that was immense, the pressure. Murthy refused. He prioritized the long term process over immediate relief. And that unwavering adherence to governance, even when it hit the bottom line, built the global trust that makes Infosys a powerhouse. Guys, your power moves for this week. The inconvenience test. When policy feels like a burden, ask yourself, am I seeking an exit because it's unfair, or is it just because it's become too hard? Number two, predictability as a currency. Be the leader who follows the rules of the house, regardless of the pressure. Predictability is trust. Third, process over shortcuts. Reward the slow but right results. Build a culture where protocol is the prize. Folks, we are currently almost at the halfway mark. If these lessons are shifting your perspective, I request you to take 10 seconds. Hit the like and subscribe button, because we need to signal that the corporate world is ready for Dharma-based leadership. And most importantly, drop your aha moments in the comments. Which of these challenges mirrors your world today? And let's grow our tribe of principled warriors together.
Absolutely. I love this term that you've coined, sir, principled warriors and dharma-based leadership. I think we definitely need it in 2026 more than ever. We have so many great startups and building our own Silicon Valley out here in India. So for founders who burn out trying to be the smartest in every room, How did Yudhishthir conquer the world without fighting a single battle personally? What is the secret to winning by leading from the center and not the front?
Okay. So we again jump back to the Khandavprastha episodes. Okay. So from the battle back to the Khandavprastha is where we go. After 23 years of toil, Khandavprastha was transformed into a most prosperous city and Yudhishthir was now truly a king in his own right. But for him to be crowned as the Samrat or the Emperor of Bharatvash, Yudhishthir had to perform the monumental Rajasuya Yagna. Now, this wasn't just merely a ritual, it was a complex geopolitical expansion that required every kingdom to acknowledge his sovereignty. Now, a lesser leader might have tried to micromanage the conquests or lead every expedition personally to secure the glory. Yudhishthir, however, understood the superpowers of his core team. He mapped out the four cardinal directions of specific temperaments and martial mastery of his brothers. He sent Arjun to the north, where his legendary skills were needed for the mountain kingdoms. He dispatched the unstoppable Bhima to the east, the scholarly Sahadev to the south, and the diplomatic Nakul to the west. Yudhishthir remained at the center, the steady anchor of the headquarters. The leader doesn't have to step into battle at every moment. He stayed back. Yudhishthir didn't interfere in their tactics or doubt their methods. And by granting them total autonomy in their respective theaters of operation, he ensured that the mission's success succeeds in record time. And he transformed, therefore, a group of individuals into a multi-directional force, proving that an emperor's true power isn't in doing everything himself, but in knowing exactly who should lead which charge and which battle. The Rajasuya Yajna was not just a victory of arms, it was a masterclass in strategic delegation where the leader's ego was secondary to the team's collective mastery. In the modern corporate landscape, one name that comes to mind is of Azim Premji of Wipro, who apparently epitomizes this Yudhishthir style delegation. Uh, Premji was famous for identifying high caliber leaders and giving them the four directions. Different business verticals like IT, consumer care, or lighting, and letting them run those units with immense autonomy. As a leader, he could have chosen to micromanage the how and focused on the who, but like the Rajasuya, this allowed Wipro to scale across diverse industries simultaneously. Coming to the few actionable steps for modern leaders. First, identify the North Star strengths. Conduct a superpower audit of your team. Don't just look at job descriptions. Find out where their natural mastery lies. Define the territory, not just the path. Tell your Arjuns what the objective is, then step back. Autonomy is the highest form of trust, which means empower your teams to the full. Only if it's a policy decision, they should come to you. There's everything else should be taken care of. And the third is the anchor role. Your job as a leader is to ensure the center, the purpose, the vision, the mission, and values. These holds while your team executes in the field. Without these four pillars, purpose, vision, mission, and values, which in my experience, very few corporates and industries, whether it's a MNC, whether it's a large organization, whether it's a small, they have simply no idea on the ground. They are in a transactional roles, not transformational. If these four are imbibed in your organization, trust me, your organization will transform itself.
Sir, I'm sure that just being a part of this live and learning so much from it, a lot of leaders are taking down notes and mentally understanding where they need to improve, where they can reshape their thought process and in term the culture of the organization as well. So I want to ask you a question that leaders often network up by stepping on those below, but if the price of that, much coveted corner office is abandoning your most loyal ally, would you trade your soul for a seat at that table?
Now let's switch back, go out to the end of the war. The Great War is over. Kurukshetra is finished. The reign had ended. Even Pandavas had finished their reign now. So at absolute end of the Mahabharata, and they begin their final journey, what is called as the Mahaprasthan, scaling the Himalayas towards their celestial realm. One by one, Yudhishthir's brothers and Draupadi fall, unable to sustain the arduous ascent. Yudhishthir alone remained, accompanied apparently only by a stray, scruffy dog that had followed him from the start. And this is mentioned in the Bori critical edition. Because sometimes people do wonder, was there really a dog? But that's what the Mahabharata, original Mahabharata, does mention. And this is when Indra descended in a golden chariot to invite him into heaven. That is great. I mean, you are now, Indradev himself has come down to take you to heaven. So much is your greatness. But Indra has one brutal condition. He says, you may enter with me, along with me, with all the, no, on a golden chariot. But the dog stays behind. There is no place for animals in the celestial abode. Yudhishthir didn't hesitate. He didn't say, let me think. He did not weigh the cost benefit of eternal bliss against a stray animal. Yudhishthir flatly refused, stating that abandoning a creature that had sought his protection was a sin greater than he had ever committed. For him, the dog wasn't just an asset or a resource or just a pet. It was a stakeholder who had been loyal with integrity, commitment when everyone else had fallen by the wayside. And this final test reveals the core of his leadership. Dharma, your duty, is indivisible. You cannot be a man of integrity if you discard the lowest member of your team to gain a seat at the highest table. In that moment of refusal, the dog transformed into Dharma, Devata itself. Yudhishthir proved that a leader's greatness is validated not by who they know in high places, but by who they refuse to leave behind in the low ones. In modern today's leadership, I would say, again, coming back to Ratan Tata, response after 26/11 Taj attacks is the definitive dog in the gate moment. He didn't just compensate the high ranking executives, he ensured that every staff member, including the street vendors outside the hotel apparently, was looked after for life. He refused to enter the heaven of corporate recovery until his most vulnerable stakeholders were secure. What can we as modern leaders do? Our steps, actionable steps. One, the exit integrity. When you move to a new role or company, how do you treat those who can no longer help your career? True loyalty or integrity is visible in how you treat your ex-team members. Number two, protect the invisible pillars. Actively recognize the contributions of the support staff, the admin, the security staff, the juniors. Their integrity is the foundation of your elevation. No one gets left behind. That's the third one. And during restructuring or crisis, the leader should be the last one to take a bonus and the first one to take a pay cut to protect the lowest ranking jobs. And this is entirely different from the capitalistic system. And we hear of so many capitalistic systems, especially in the US and Western world, where the company is sinking and the top management takes away huge bonuses. I mean, I don't know. Okay, we are live in public, so therefore I'll not express my true feelings. But you can guess what those true feelings are against these people.
Yes, sir. I think with these sessions and the way you are deep diving into these lessons, I feel like we are reviving the ancient Indian leadership techniques and the way we conducted business more than anything else, instead of seeking out validation from the West, so to say. So, one of the instances from Yudhishthir's lives was walking in unarmed into a rival's camp. So, why walk unarmed into a rival's camp even before the first shot? Can showing respect to a competitor in our world actually dismantle their strategy? Is civility a weakness, or is it the ultimate tactical high ground?
Okay, so I would say the rivals camp is a wrong word over here. It will be the okay. Let's see as we go along. If we can get a better word for this, let us see. So the situation is again we are back now to the from the Himalayas. We are back to the war. War is about to start. Both armies are lined up. The tension is at its absolute peak, and Arjun, uh, people will know, ask Krishna to drive his chariot into the no man's land between the two armies. Now, Arjun in front of him sees his elders and kinsmen and relatives, brothers, and Arjun loses his nerve. And then that is when Krishna delivers the Bhagavad Gita. And at the conclusion of the Gita, Arjun picks up his Gandiv Dhanusha, the bow, his doubts are resolved, and he is ready to strike. And the conches had bled, and the two great armies of that age, the greatest armies of that age, in fact, stood poised now for total annihilation at Kurukshetra. In that breathtaking moment of silence, just before the first arrows are to be fired, Yudhishthir did something that again froze both sides in shock. He stepped off his chariot, discarded his weapons, removed his armor, and began walking alone and bare feet, where towards the enemy battle lines. His brothers, all of them fearing a trap or a sudden surrender, but they were not sure what he is going to do, rushed after him. But Yudhishthir wasn't surrendering. He was practicing his highest form of dharma. He approached his elders, Bhishma, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, who are now actually his mortal enemies, and touched their feet. And he sought their permission to fight them and asked them for blessings or victory. This must have put them into a dharma sankat. Now, this was not a sign of weakness. It was a masterstroke by Yudhishthir of civility. By acknowledging that these rivals were once his mentors, he transformed a blood feud into a principled conflict. And the elders initially hesitated, didn't know how to do it, but finally they gave their blessings and also revealed secrets of their own defeat now. Yudhishthir proved that even in the middle of a cutthroat market war, and here it was a brutal war for annihilation, a leader who honors the legacy of his predecessors and the expertise of his rivals gains a moral gravity that no weapon can pierce. He showed that you can be a fierce competitor without becoming a savage. And one example here comes to mind, which I got to know recently, is in the corporate context. I would say is Narayan Murthy and apparently Doyen F.C. Kohli. He is considered the father of Indian IT and also the TCS founder. And their encounter exemplifies this. So they were fierce competitors for global contracts. Murthy always maintained the Yudhishthir-like respect for Kohli's pioneering work. When Kohli passed away, Murthy's tribute wasn't to a rival, but to a mentor who paved the way for the entire industry. This civility ensures that the ecosystem thrives even when individual firms compete. Let's look at now some actionable steps for modern leaders. First, acknowledge the giants. In your town halls or strategy meets, credit the competitors who innovated first. This shows confidence, not weakness. Second, the civility protocol. Maintain professional decorum during hostile takeovers or aggressive poaching. Hey, it's just a war that you're fighting, yes, but the rules of battle must never be forgotten. How do you treat your leaving employee or a losing rival defines your brand. Third, seek wisdom elsewhere. Don't be just too proud to learn a best practice from a competitor's playbook. Yes, respecting their expertise allows you to surpass it. Radical humility is a corporate superpower. Folks, if this no man's land's walk shifted your lens a little bit, please subscribe to join our tribe of principal leaders. Drop in your comments your biggest aha moment in the comment section. What are your breakthroughs? And what are those that inspire those weekly deep dives? Because they inspire us. Let's lead with character.
So I want to take you back now to another time and I want to relate it to today's modern corporate world. So the lights are out, the office is stripped down. Do you, as a leader, wait for the good times to return, or do you turn a forced 13-year break into a high level training ground for your future empire?
Okay. So we are now back before the war. So we're shifting, I hope you're able to keep track, all the viewers, of where all are we going to. But still it makes it interesting to say, okay, where are we now? So now we are in to the world. A 13-year-old exile looked like aimless wandering. You know, but inside the Kamakya forest, Yudhisthir was running a high stakes leadership academy. While Arjun hunted for celestial weapons, Bhima built raw muscle. Yudhisthir was constructing the intellectual and ethical architecture of an empire. He didn't treat the exile as a sabbatical or forced retirement. He didn't get bored. He transformed their camp into a shadow cabinet by hosting deep dive sessions with visiting sages. He debated the nuances of statecraft and Raj Dharma. He ensured that the Pandav brand didn't gather dust in the wilderness. And when the market finally reopened at Kurukshetra, they weren't just warriors, they were statesmen ready to rebuild a broken nation. Look at ISRO in the 1990s. Faced with international sanctions and denied the cryogenic technology, the organization was effectively in exile from the global space elite. Instead of stagnating, leaders like Dr. K. Kasturirangan invested heavily in indigenous R&D and internal shadow projects. That period of upskilling in the wilderness is exactly what fueled the triumphs of later on missions like the Chandrayaan and Mangalayaan. That sharpened the saw playbook made popular by Stephen Covey. If you stop learning the moment you lose your office, you are unfit to hold it ever again. Here is how you use downtime as a weapon. I call it the sabbatical strategy. During a market slump or between projects, don't just wait and watch. Initiate your learning spirits for your core team to master emerging technologies like maybe today's artificial intelligence or ESG. If you aren't evolving, you are evaporating. And this I personally witnessed during the COVID years. When COVID hit, it hit the whole world. Nobody knew what to do, what was to be done. Within a few months, people realized, okay, this too shall pass. And everybody had frozen their budgets, they'd withdrawn from everywhere else. I'm in the training industry as a leadership coach. Everything stopped, zero billing, no programs coming in. Suddenly, then out of the blue, inquiry started, and those organizations we realized, look, nothing is happening now. But this will last for 6 months. What do I do with this big staff that I've got? Yes, we're taking losses, but now is the time we can spare them for training. At other times, they're so busy trying to manufacture and sell and market, etc., etc. They have no time for training. Now there's nothing happening. This will pass. Let's train now. And these companies invested in their teams and trained. Second lesson is the shadow cabinet. Form an informal group of mentors and industry veterans to challenge your current strategy while you are off the field. Let them find cracks in your plan before the real battle begins. And the armed forces, we use this quite well. So we always have somebody wearing you're wearing a black hat. There's 6 thinking hats thing. So you're a black hat. That means you point fingers. This is not right. That's not right. Only when when your other team are able to satisfactorily answer the doubts, then your strategy is probably battle ready. Third, sharpen the why. Use any slump in the conditions. Like today, there is turmoil happening because of the oil, because of the Middle East war. Donald Trump has created, and Iran is there, and there is confusion. We don't know whether oil will go to $300. Use the slumps to revisit your core values, your very purpose. This is the best time to prune toxic cultures and reinforce the dharma of your company. A leader's steel is forced in the quiet periods. Don't waste your exiles. Use it to build your empire.
Extremely powerful words and powerful advice for all of our leaders. Sir, a very interesting question I want to ask you. Suppose your top partner is poached. Do you burn the bridge or do you keep it open? Can a single graceful conversation turn that defector into a strategic asset within the enemy's own boardroom?
Lovely. Now we are again before the war. The war clouds have gathered, people are coming from all over the place, taking sides. And now what do you do when your star partner, the one whom you think you need to win the war, gets poached by your biggest rival? And most leaders would then declare a cold war. But Yudhishthir, he handled the Shalya defection with pure clinical class. So Shalya was marching to join the Pandavas when Duryodhan intercepted him with a corporate hospitality trap, a lavish welcome party. And trapped by his own word of honor, Shalya felt forced now to switch sides to the Kauravas. He was obviously feeling guilty. And when he arrived to break the news to the Pandavas, they were ready to scream betrayal. But Yudhishthir didn't burn the bridge. And he chose literally a high octane emotional intelligence. He validated Shalya's predicament and treated him with such grace that Shalya actually agreed to help the Pandavas from the inside. What a masterstroke. Acting now as a psychological double agent to blunt Karna's confidence during the final showdown. And if you remember that in the Karna episode, you had talked about this, that Shalya was always in Karna's ear saying, "You are doomed, you will not survive," etc., etc. That you can. So those of you have missed that, please go and see the Karna episode. Yudhishthir proved that a graceful exit is often more valuable than a forced stay. In a modern Indian corporate landscape, we see, this is what I heard. I am not swear it is true, but I've heard this to somebody. There's something called as a HUL mafia. Okay, that's a tongue in cheek. Please don't take that mafia word literally. Okay, it is just to show that they are close together, right? That's what the mafia is. They're very close together. So the HUL mafia, And also, what I understand is the Infosys alumni culture. So these guys don't treat a departure like a funeral. Where ye chhod ke chala gaya and all that stuff. Leaders like Harsh Mariwala of Marico have mastered this. So ex-employees are your biggest brand ambassadors. And by maintaining these Yudhisthir-like ties, you ensure a network of goodwill that leads to future partnerships rather than a scorched earth rivalry. You know, in the Girish Konkar playbook, what I would say for exits, you can write this down. First one is the farewell high five. When a star performer leaves for a rival, stop the traitor narrative. Congratulate them. Your grace today is your bridge for tomorrow. The why behind the buy. Was it a Duryodhan style trap of perks or a genuine need for growth that the person has left? Understand the motive and keep the door ajar. The ecosystem win is the third. Ask, can this person's success at a rival help grow the overall industry? A competitor who respects you for this is a strategic asset. The Yudhisthir blueprint, soul and system. In the Bori critical edition, this isn't for scholars, it's a survival manual for your Monday morning. We often mistake Yudhishthir's patience for his passivity. We are wrong. His leadership was the most sophisticated of all. It was leadership of the soul and the system. Whether from the Yaksha's lake to the Shalya's tent, he reminds us that true power is found in unbreakable alignment with your purpose, your dharma, with your duty. You can lose your kingdom, but as long as you don't lose your integrity, you remain undefeated. In today's world, sometimes we say growth at any cost. Yudhishthir offers a timeless alternatives, sustainability through equity. I'd like to leave this with you as your 2026 power moves, the Dharma toolkit. One, the 5 second rule. When crisis or 5 seconds, when crisis hits and your dimag, your brain goes from a 0 to 100, press the pause button for 5 seconds. Give your Vivek, the conscious mind, a chance to step in before your subconscious mind and your ego fires a reply or email. Second, got the Apna Banda audit. Stop just rewarding your Arjuns. Are you ignoring your Nakuls? True loyalty is built when the support teams knows that their back, that you have their back as much as the board's. Third, the Mool Karan strategy. That is the basic strategy. Stop patching potholes. Find the root cause. Fix the system, and you'll find the systems vanish. Fourth, the Ardha Satya audit. Don't fall into the Chalta Hai trap with the truth. If you use a technicality to hide a delay, your leadership chariot hits the dirt. Own the elephant immediately. And then the Agni Pariksha, your 3 missions. I'm going to put you through your Agni Pariksha this week. No more theory. Execute these 3 missions. Mission 1, the equity audit. Like I said earlier, identify one Nakul in your organization, someone talented outside your inner circle, and actively sponsor their growth. Mission number 2, the no man's land walk. Reach out to a former rival or a defected colleague with a message of professional respect. Close the bridge. Don't burn it. Mission number 3, the integrity pulse. Before the next high stakes decision, ask, is there a whispered half truth in this? If yes, choose the difficult path. Folks, today we leave behind the anchor in the storm. And we've seen how steel is forged in the quiet adherence to Dharma. But leadership is a multifaceted jewel. And next week, we pivot from the steady center to the surgical edge. Do join us next week in the episode number 8, where we deconstruct the world's greatest practitioner of the one pointed focus. We learn how to transition from a strategic patience to surgical execution. I'll see you at the target next week. Mark your calendar for next Thursday, 8 p.m. for episode number 8. I'm sure you guessed who that is. Before you log off, do like, subscribe, and drop your aha moments in the comment section. I'll see you at the target. Thank you, Apurva. It was great. Take care.
So much, sir. Another great